Okay, so today we have a special guest for the channel. Bryn Davis from Mice Media is joining us. He is a key witness in Michael Irvin's $100 million defamation lawsuit against Marriott and various other defendants, which he recently refiled in Arizona. Bryn, thank you very much today for letting me interview you.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so we've all seen the surveillance video by now, and it depicts Irvin with his accuser having a very brief interaction. One of the problems that I've noticed with that interaction or with that video is that it has no audio. Since you were one of the only people who were not employed by Marriott who were within earshot of that conversation, that makes you a key witness in Irvin's defamation case. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I do. It'll be interesting to see. Yep.
So I guess my first question to you would be, when you watched that surveillance video for the first time, what was your initial response to it?
When I saw the surveillance video, I mean, to be honest, not much changed at all, right? Especially if you separate the narrative that was placed behind it and you just look at it purely as the video. It was just, you know, it was exactly obviously what I remembered and kind of how the whole thing went along. So I wasn't that surprised when I saw it.
And we'll have a chance to walk through the video. I'm actually going to play it for you here in a second and have you kind of narrate it. But before we do that, let's set the scene for our viewers. It was the night of February 5th. It was a Super Bowl week. You're in the Dust Cutter Bar at the Renaissance Hotel in Phoenix having a drink. You see Michael Irvin walk into the bar. So you were there first and you witnessed Michael walk into the bar?
No. Actually, we were there. I had arrived for a meeting, and coincidentally, I don't even drink. So I was there for a meeting, you know, hanging out, and one of the gentlemen that I was with pointed over and said, "I think that's Michael Irvin." And obviously, I looked over. He had been, you know, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 feet away. And I noticed him. Obviously, I recognized him. I grew up in Philadelphia, so I'm very well aware of who Michael Irvin is. And, you know, we offered him to buy him a drink because it was kind of exciting to see Michael Irvin, right? So when the waitress went over and came back, she said, "Hey, you know, Michael said thank you so much, but he said he's going to decline your drink. He has to wake up tomorrow morning pretty early." And he came over and was incredibly nice. He came over and hung out for, you know, several minutes, if not more. And we just kind of, you know, had a nice conversation. And he had said, you know, I have to wake up tomorrow at 8 a.m. I'm going to be on ESPN. And he was actually funny. He said, "This is what we're going to be talking about. So tell your friends." He's like, because you can tell them in advance and we're talking about the Eagles or whatever. And he could see that I had my phone on me that was actually on. And he said, "Hey, if you wanted to grab a picture, let's pop outside." And that's when we went outside and everything really started to go from there.
Now, during your conversation with Irvin, you told Irvin that he destroyed your childhood.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah, no, and it's actually important and relevant. I said, "Hey," I said, you ruined my childhood. I was, you know, I grew up in the 90s. I was a 90s kid, and I'm an Eagles fan. Like you know, you ran all over us. We couldn't go anywhere. And but what's interesting about that is, first of all, his response was he loved it, but he grabbed my shoulders. He was kind of giving me man hugs and whatever. And it stands out to me because as I was watching that film, if he had done that, the same thing with that woman, it would be over in terms of, you know, people's perception. And the difference between his physical contact with me as a male and her jumped out because he obviously didn't do the same thing. Even when he was laughing with her, there was far less physical contact.
Out of curiosity, do you have the photo that you took with Irvin on your phone still?
Yeah, and a guy that came out that was also some sort of fan, he had a Miami Hurricanes visor on. He took a bunch of pictures. And that's what was pretty interesting because when I had read the article that came out on Tuesday, right, I woke up and looked through my phone. It said sexual misconduct. And I thought, like, this is something from a long time ago. And I just posted a picture with this guy. It's horrible. And later on, when I'd found out that that was actually where we were with him, when you go through your iPhone, it keeps the timestamp on it. Right. And it was crazy because it was about, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes, 7 minutes, something like that, from the time that we took our photos until this whole interaction occurred. So that's how I knew that I was there even during this interaction. There's a bunch of photos. This is the first one, and it was at 11:07 on February 5th. If you can see that.
Yeah, if you hold it, there you go. Hold it up a little bit. Okay.
I'm that really handsome, skinny guy right there, right?
And that's okay.
But I mean, it keeps on going through like a bunch of photos. Like I said, the guy just kept on taking photo after photo. But the last one was taken at This one was taken at, which it was the one that a lot of people had used on in their article. That was at 11:08.
11:08, February 5th. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm not seeing a man who looks visibly intoxicated. And that is one of the accusations that Marriott has leveled against Irvin that night, is that he's not stumbled into the bar, but walked into the bar from being out having drinks that night, and he was visibly intoxicated, is the way that Marriott describes it. Was there anything in your interactions? It sounds like you were in fairly close proximity to Irvin that night, taking selfies, and he was massaging your shoulders, apparently. Was there anything that indicated to you that he was intoxicated, drunk? Talk about that.
No, he wasn't drunk. And since, everything that I've talked about was firsthand, not hearsay, et cetera, I have no idea if he drank before that. I know that he turned down our drink because he was going to bed. But he was not visibly intoxicated by any stretch. And I don't drink, so I would have recognized it. It wouldn't have been something I forgot. So I don't know, if he had drinks at the bar, what he was drinking at the bar, but he turned down our drink. And I would definitely not say that he smelled like alcohol or was stumbling by any stretch.
So his eyes weren't glazed over. He wasn't slurring his speech, nothing like that.
No. And I mean, I don't have much experience with Michael Irvin, even, to be honest with you, even watching like his broadcast. Mm-hmm. He was a super friendly guy. And I hope that's not mistaken for him being like loose or having a few drinks. I think that's, to me, it was just the way that he is.
For somebody who's seen him on TV, he's certainly has a gregarious, outgoing personality. Oh, yeah. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people like about him is his just joy for life, which comes across, and it sounds like his interactions with fans as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. When we offered him the drink, I had no idea what his personality was like because I really don't know much about him, and was shocked at how like nice and friendly he was. He was like, it wasn't your normal athlete interaction. He was a really good dude.
Now let's take a look at the surveillance footage. Walk us through what you were seeing. Here we have the video, and I'm going to rewind it a little bit. You can see in the upper right of the screen, Irvin and some people walking into the bar. Where are you in this scene?
Okay, so the gentleman with the white hat there, that's one of the guys that I was with, Joe. Right now, you can see me. So in the front of that pack right there is Michael. Behind him is Joe. If you go over to the left to drop, that's my business partner, Phil. Okay. He's from Australia, and I'm right behind those guys.
Okay, so that's you in the black shirt right there.
Yes, sir.
And Phil was one of the other witnesses who TMZ interviewed shortly after the incident.
Yes.
I'm going to play it a little bit. And this right here, as we know now, is Jane Doe, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So when we came in, she had come around that corner, as you can see, and kind of, for lack of a better word, intercepted Michael as he was walking by.
One of the unfortunate things about this video is that we can't really see the start of that interaction because of this pole right here, this column, but it looks like you were in fairly close proximity to it and might have been able to see. One thing that Marriott has accused Irvin of doing is flagging her down as though he were a predator on the hunt. Irvin has vehemently denied that allegation. Who, from your vantage point, initiated the interaction between the two?
So, in real time, when I was there, as she came around the corner, that really, when they came more or less face to face right then and there, that's when the conversation started. And then it kind of migrated behind that pole, unfortunately, or that column. But to me, Michael was going to his room directly. He had talked about how tired he was multiple times. And, from my recollect and from witnessing it, it was more of a conversation that initiated when she rounded that corner. And that's what just kind of started the conversation, because he was going directly in the direction that she was coming through.
And so I'm going to fast forward it here to where they first meet and they shake hands, it looks like. And then I want to focus your attention on the manager here in the left. Now, Irvin's attorney has pointed out some strange behavior that this manager, the restaurant bar manager, engages in that we can see on this video. There's a kind of a strange clapping motion that the manager appears to make to the Jane Doe employee. Mm-hmm. And I'll play that so that our audience can see it without me pausing it. And you can see the clapping motion there, and he appears to be looking straight at her. And this is as you would have been entering the bar, it looks like, and sitting down at your seat. Did you see that firsthand when the manager, did you even notice the manager when he first enters the scene?
I did not at all. Throughout the whole entire time, I never even noticed that he was there, to be completely transparent.
During this interaction, this is the very beginning of the interaction with Irvin and his accuser. You at no point did you see this manager here with his hands on his hips, kind of staring intensely over at Irvin and his employee?
I did not. It wasn't something that was even on my radar. Obviously, I didn't know what was happening, the weight of what would happen. So I wasn't really looking around for the manager, because the conversation itself was just a friendly interaction. So I didn't notice the manager, and I didn't notice him until I saw this video come out a couple days ago.
Here we see in the video, Irvin kind of steps forward towards the employee, and she kind of steps back like that into the lobby. From what it looks like to me, Irvin and the employee were blocking the entranceway to the bar. You could see people walking by. Would you say, from your vantage point, was Irvin aggressively approaching her there, or was he blocking the entrance to the restaurant bar? And are they just kind of getting out of the way of traffic?
Yeah, so that was there's obviously those two entrances you can see to go into that little lounge area. And where they were was directly in that opening, like the main thoroughfare. So they moved off to the side. And I'm not sure where we are in the video, but during their interaction, I was talking with the gentleman, Joe, next to me, because Michael, this sounds ridiculous, but his physique for his age, we were looking up his age because he was in such good shape. Mm-hmm. And we looked over and saw him. Directly at this point is when we started having that conversation. And it was not like an aggressive move anywhere. It was to get out of right between those two columns right there.
So moving on to later in the video, they've started talking, as we can see here. I can see one of the gentlemen at your table right here keeps kind of looking back and checking, like when you see a celebrity, you want to look back and see what's going on. Is this when you were having a conversation about Michael Irvin's physique and what else were you talking about? Okay.
To be honest, it's because Joe, who I'm with, is the same exact age as Michael. We didn't know that until we looked it up in this moment.
Oh, wow.
And Joe and myself are not in the best shape in the world. So Joe was like, oh, like, this isn't like, I can't believe that guy's my age. And that's what he's looking back at. And we were still, attentive to what was going on over there, because he was still, I look back right now, as you can see. Right. And because we were talking about them being the same age.
We can see in the video that the manager appears to move on from staring at the interaction. We can see the manager is fairly close to your table at this point. Did you at any point observe the manager's demeanor or even notice him during the interaction?
No, I can't speak to that at all. I wasn't paying any attention to him whatsoever. At that point, we were still looking at the pictures and looking up stuff about Michael, and I did not notice that manager at all.
During the conversation between Irvin and Jane Doe, could you actually hear anything that was being said? Did you hear any specific comments or words or laughter at any point?
Yeah, I mean, so we were within earshot, obviously, and when they first met each other, it was, "Hey, Michael Irvin." Said, "Yes, I'm Michael Irvin." They had a conversation. There was laughter, and that's kind of, again, it was kind of a not very noteworthy, friendly conversation. So, while we could hear the tone of it and how it was flowing, from everything that I heard, there was nothing out of the normal or even a different tone than a regular fan or, whatever interaction. There was laughter because we heard, I remember them both laughing.
Right about here in the video where she kind of kicks her leg, I believe they shook hands one last time, and she kind of goes back into the bar area. Describe what you heard at that moment.
As he was walking away, and towards the end of the conversation, he said, I'll be here all week. Just kind of as like they had just met each other and were talking back and forth. And that was it. There was nothing out of the norm about the interaction that I witnessed whatsoever. And he then started to make his way to where the elevator is, which is where he goes after this interaction. And that was it. She went back to work, and there was we were there for a little while after that. I'm not sure how long, but not, for a little while, and everything went along as normal. There was no hush over the crowd or anybody talking about anything. It was just the rest of the night was normal.
When you observed Jane Doe's demeanor after the interaction, just briefly describe what her demeanor looked like. You said there was no awkward hush or awkward silence that fell over the crowd. Describe what you saw Jane Doe's demeanor after her interaction with Irvin.
Back to work. There was nothing notable about anything that happened at all. Again, I was shocked 2 days later when I found out this was what they were even talking about. There was nothing out of the norm about the rest of the time that we were there whatsoever.
So a friendly smile, or could you see, was she smiling? Did she have a look of distress on her face?
Oh no, they were both smiling. I mean, again, it's a shame you can't hear the audio, but there was laughter. It was a very like happy, normal conversation. There was no like awkward, change of tone or, someone telling someone not to do something or whatever. There was none of that. It was just a normal interaction. And afterwards it was back to the norm.
I'm showing you the part of this surveillance footage after the interaction has ended between Irvin and the accuser. And we do see right here, Irvin slap himself 3 times. And then he goes out to take a selfie with one of the Marriott employees, apparently, or one of the Renaissance employees. Did you at any point when he was slapping himself, did you hear what he actually said or the tone of what was said at that point in the video?
No, at this point, I think I assumed he probably had left, or I didn't hear what he said when he slapped his face at all. I didn't hear "she bad" or anything like that. In watching the video later, and again, this is not anything that I heard in that moment, but when I watched the video, looking at it without the narrative that was set by either party, my first inclination was that he had told us multiple times that he was tired and going to bed. And that's what I assumed that the slapping face was about, because again, I didn't hear "she bad," or anybody laughing about something he said like that. It just wasn't something that I even noticed.
So you didn't hear any laughter, like he made some sort of crude joke, locker room talk, or anything like that?
No. There was nothing like that I heard or recall whatsoever.
So shifting gears a little bit here, did any investigators from Marriott or the NFL Network ever contact you shortly after the incident?
No. So no, never. Nobody from the Marriott, nobody from the NFL, and nobody from ESPN or anything like that. No.
Am I correct in understanding that you saw Irvin on a plane at some point after the incident? I thought I heard in an interview you mentioned something about seeing Irvin on an airplane.
No, I didn't see him on an airplane. What had happened was relatively serendipitous. So we had somebody that I was there with, a gentleman named Tony Bruno, who had a big, radio presence for a very long time, and still does. He was on Radio Row, and somebody had from Michael's team had gone up and said, I guess this was on Tuesday after I'd read the article, but before I knew that it was this incident, said, hey, this is what happened with Michael or whatever. A Sunday night, he was at the Marriott, and the Tony Bruno's fiance now said, oh my gosh, I know the people that were with him. And they called me and said, Bryn, I'm 2 people that know Michael are here. I think you were there when this all happened. And pretty quickly I spoke to them on the phone, and then they said, Michael's agent would probably reach out to you in a moment if that's okay with you. And he did. And then, I explained the story, and, I said, hey, listen, I said, I really don't care, but if you want, I can send you the pictures, because it was in the exact several moments. And this was before obviously anybody saw this video. And he said, okay, let me just confirm a few things to make sure this is accurate. Would you be okay with hopping on a 3-way call with Michael? And I said, of course. So a moment later, they called back, and Michael was on the phone, very like as if, not a very somber kind of guy. And he said, hey, and I said, Michael, I said, I'm sure you don't remember me. I said, but because there are so many people he's speaking to, I said, but I was a guy, and I explained what we talked about what he was talking about on ESPN. I said, hey, then we went outside. And as I was telling my story, he started to like literally finish my sentence. He's like, oh my gosh, you were talking about Jalen Hurts. Oh, yeah, we went outside. He goes, and before I knew it, he got very emotional. And the next thing I heard him say was, I got to get off this plane. I got to get off this plane. He had exited the plane at that point because I think he was heading back to Dallas. So, because I think maybe he'd been asked to leave or whatever. And now that he knew that I guess somebody was there and could recall it and all of that, he immediately left and got off that plane.
So in other words, he wanted to as soon as he found out this breaking news, he wanted to go back to Phoenix to try to clear things up, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think it was because he thought that it was not like there was nobody around. And, you know, when I spoke to him, the biggest thing that he kept on asking was, he goes, I talked to so many people. I have no idea who this woman could be out of the people that I spoke to, because all the conversations were like the same. You know, he said, and he couldn't wrap his mind around who had said that he said something, because again, he was talking to a bunch of different people. So that was, and he looked horrific. He was pretty torn apart that next day. I don't think he'd eaten. He was still wearing the same clothes because they'd asked him to leave in the middle of the night. So like, it was you know, it was
you
sad.
could clearly see he was in some degree of emotional distress there.
Entirely.
Is there anything else that you wanted to comment on before we end the interview?
No. You know, I'd like to keep it as minimal as possible, only because, you know, it was, and stick to, you know, what I saw and heard and not my interpretation necessarily. But yeah, it's a shame. I'd never been that close to something or that surprised by something when, you know, it just was not at all the experience that I had and what I witnessed and what I heard as to what I read in the newspaper on Tuesday morning, or read online on Tuesday morning.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Bryn. That's all I have for you. And I greatly appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective on this and commenting on the surveillance footage.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, buddy.